Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
By everybody, I mean Raja, Kamala, thank you. Asha,
Hello.
hello. Chaitna in Mumbai.
Hi, everyone.
Yes, Chaitna in Mumbai, that's correct. Yes, and Chitra in Chennai.
Hello.
Very good. Okay, so I have another screen on my computer which says the stream has not started yet, but I believe it has because on my window it says live.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is one of those things where we may be having this conversation just for ourselves. We may be having it for others. Some people might be listening in. There might be a recording that's being made of this, but it doesn't matter, right? We're just going to talk a bit, and if for some reason it is being webcast and a recording is being made, we can decide afterwards if we want to, let the recording be public or not. Okay?
Sure.
Great. Okay, we are gathered here today during the 4th annual Chennai Storytelling Festival, and the theme of the festival this year, there are two themes. One is the big rain that happened last month, and the other is communication. Storytelling and communication, storytelling for communication, and then we added communication between cultures. That was really the original idea. Then storytelling between people, and then the rather abstract idea, storytelling within people. So your left hand can know what your right hand is doing. Yes. We might talk about that a little bit, and I thought we might also talk about the state of the storytelling revival in the world today. By the way, I'm Eric Miller, born and raised in New York City, but now very happily settled in Chennai. And this is Ruth Stoddard, who needs no introduction.
Oh.
But would you introduce yourself?
I like it better, needs no introduction. Actually, you know what? The best introduction I ever had in my whole life was a man introduced me, stood up, and he said, well, all I'm going to tell you about Ruth Stoddard is that she shares her birthday with Aldous Huxley, Carl Jung, George Bernard Shaw, and Gracie Allen. And then he stepped back. And I thought that was the nicest introduction I've ever had in my whole life.
Okay, well that's one introduction. Ruth Stoddard is a scholar of storytelling and was chair of a storytelling program at a college in California for 15 years. So she is an academic as well as a performing artist. I'm afraid we're going to have to go on silent mode with the phone. Yes, so she is she's a folklore scholar and also a performer, and she is the guest host of this video conference and of the festival this year. So we're very honored to have you with us in Chennai. And okay, so now let's proceed to begin to address some of these questions. And I feel actually we should introduce the other people who are with us, right?
Yes,
Alvin Raja, based in Chennai, professional storyteller and publisher of a magazine for schools and children and teachers relating to storytelling and education. Asha Sampath, organization is Tailspin. That's T-A-L-E, Spin. Storytelling organization, does many storytelling activities. Chaitna in Mumbai, image consultant. How do you describe yourself, Chaitna? professionally?
Yeah, I describe myself as an experiential art-based facilitator,
Wonderful.
and yeah, we use methods of TO and playback theater and image work to work with women and children.
Oh.
Great. And Chitra, again here in Chennai, are you doing professional storytelling activities these days, or what else are you doing?
Oh, that's something which I really look forward to get started. Well, professional front, I'm basically an IT project manager, and recently turned stay-at-home mom. I've taken a big break from my career, and I think it's been an opportunity for me to rediscover, go back, looking at my passion. So storytelling is also one of them, which is why I'm here with all of you.
Wonderful. Okay, so let me begin about the storytelling revival. Um, it seems Asia is a very happening place these days. A few months ago, myself and my wife went to Hong Kong for the first meeting of the International Expressive Arts Therapy Association in Asia. Expressive arts therapy is the combination of using drama, storytelling, dance, art, music for therapy. My wife is a counselor and uses the arts and trains people in the arts, and I help with storytelling therapy. But what I'm saying is that it's the first time that this association, which is based in California, met in Asia. And here in India, the storytelling revival is really beginning to catch on, I feel, especially, well, with children, of course, but especially in the business world for human resource development purposes, teaching communication skills, conflict resolution skills. So a lot of the storytelling and the arts, of course, comes from Asia. And the multi-sensory aspect of it all comes from Asia. But what's happening is that it took root in the West, and now it's being fed back to Asia through the filter of modern psychology or the storytelling revival, which is said to have begun in the U.S. and the U.K. in the 1960s. So it's a very interesting time here in Asia, where a lot of things are happening. Of course, a mix of East and West. So I'm very happy to be a part of this here in Chennai. Ruth, from what you've seen here in Chennai these last few days, can you add anything to that, or disagree with that, or?
No, and it's very similar. The festivals and the types of stories and the procedures of the techniques seem very universal to what I've seen in France or America, which I guess are the only countries where I've really observed other people telling stories.
So there's a sort of international style now developing and you feel we fit into it, and we're on the level with it.
Yeah. Of course, the only other example, when you're a tourist and you're in another country and they put on a show for you, a shadow puppet show, and obviously it's culture, but you don't know when you're a tourist whether you're seeing something that a family that lives there would see, or if it's been adapted and adopted and presented to you, or as an echo for us, make money for the country.
But the kind of storytelling that you've seen, this revival storytelling, telling some folk tales, telling some personal experience stories, it hasn't really been presented, I think, as a tourist attraction, right? It's just individuals.
Except I thought it was really interesting that at your festival last weekend, there was a couple in town from Holland, and they saw in the paper that there was this storytelling event. So they came the first night, and guess what? They came back the second night. So and they're only here for 1 week, so they gave up 2 of their nights visiting in Chennai to come to the storytelling. I thought that was very complimentary.
Mm-hmm. I think as things develop, there'll be a mix of modern storytelling with traditional methods. You know, in Vilupatu, in Katha Kalachebam, it goes back and forth between singing and talking. And there are different types of melody in the voice and rhythm in the voice. I have a feeling performers here will incorporate some of those techniques even using English, but calling on these traditional genres. Anyone else out there? Do you have any thoughts about? Well, first of all, do you accept this term, storytelling revival? Do you know what I mean by it?
I would rather call it the revival of the oral tradition, Eric. Of calling it storytelling, I would rather classify it as the oral tradition.
And you're saying you feel there is a need for it here in India, this revival of the oral tradition?
Everywhere around the globe. Why only India? Every culture has had the oral tradition handed down from early times. It's just that we got caught up in too much of ourselves to pay much attention to this rich oral tradition. I had a wonderful grandmother, my mom's mom, who told us fantastic stories when we spent a vacation, with her in her home. And actually, my mother was working, and she never really did tell stories to my children, nor did I, except that I got them a lot of books. My husband and I bought them a lot of books, and yes, they did read stories. But after I kind of began to tell stories, my sons have been attending. Every time they are here, they do attend a session of mine. And I feel happy. They enjoy the stories. And I think, yes, to answer your question directly, there is definitely a revival. Well, you know it, and I know it. When I began a few years ago, there were just about 4 of us active storytellers, or 4 or 5. And today, there are as many as 10 or 12 active storytellers in our own group. Wouldn't you agree?
Mm-hmm. So, the kind of common wisdom is that as the extended families are dwindling, we are filling a niche. We are filling a need that used to be filled by the senior family members.
That is correct. Only that in those times, the grandmothers used to tell stories to the grandkids. Now we've expanded that, and we say storytelling is for all age groups. Everybody loves a story. So there is no age bar, basically. And it's nice to see when fathers, men, daddies come in, or grandfathers come in, because more often than not, it is only the mothers who bring in their children. So I'm always excited when we have a couple of gents in the audience when we have storytelling session. So definitely, yes, the revival is catching on. And I think as storytellers, or rather, we are the keepers of the stories in a very large way. We keep the stories and we tell them and share them and make sure it reaches other people. So definitely, yes, it is reviving, and it's a big news for all of us.
You know, there's a reason why they're called grandmother stories, and it's that traditionally women were telling them, and it was a part of raising children. And traditionally, women, had the most responsibilities with raising children. But I think it's a wonderful thing if men now are also taking responsibility for raising children and telling these stories. So this is part of the evolution of society. I think that sophisticated men are also getting involved in child rearing. To me, the most exciting thing is helping and encouraging other people to tell stories, not just to listen to our stories. And perhaps when we're working with adults, that's especially the case. Chaitanya, do you, in your workshops, invite participants to tell stories? And do you mostly work with their life stories, or do you work with other stories also?
Hello.
Well, yeah, Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Yes, for the women's workshop that we do, we encourage a lot of personal stories from women, and we generally combine it either with movement work or with art-based work. And in our playback theater work is where our actors do a lot of, they do an improvisational enactment of people's personal stories, and we generally have it around a theme. Like, for example, with a group of teachers, last week we did a personal storytelling space on the dreams of becoming a teacher and life thereafter. And for a corporate set of people, we did a workshop on unconscious biases at workplaces. So we did a storytelling, circle sharing piece with the corporate last month. Yeah.
But you know, when we first mention the word storytelling, people think we're talking about animal fables for children, animal stories for children. Do you find it's a hard sell to explain that you're talking about other things in addition to that kind of storytelling?
Yes, of course. The minute when we spoke about, I remember my client meeting for the first time. I spoke with the training head at one of the leading companies in India, and he thought that I would be getting some props of rabbit and lion and pig in the skin and kind of enacting that, a circus show. That's what he meant. And then I went on explaining and making him understand that storytelling is what we do every day in our lives, dialogues, conversations, and how do you get more meaning and more expressions through these, guided facilitation methods. So then he understood, and yes, definitely, you're right, Eric.
Yes, so this kind of mix of these two different subjects, the animal fables and fairy tales for children and the personal experience telling by adults, I feel, at least in my case, it's kind of a sneaky way of facilitating, teaching, helping adults to communicate better, with more, get more in touch with themselves, more grounded, to know themselves more. Um, uh, so this is sort of the, I guess, myself as a professor, as a social reformer. This is sort of my a kind of a secret agenda of mine to help the public sphere develop in the sense of helping society, global society, be able to communicate better. I'm not. I guess it's none of my business, but that's part of what I think I'm doing with this storytelling work.
Well, I want to raise the point that uh, I don't draw that separation between fairy tales for children and animal tales for children, because one of the classes I teach is analyzing fairy tales and folk tales, and I think it's a wonderful way to explore family dynamics and distance yourself, but you see how in the stories the older brothers and sisters are mean to the younger brother or sister, which still happens even if we interpret it that I am all three brothers or I am all three sisters. And the first time I just don't succeed because I wasn't listening to advice, and the second time maybe I tried, I wasn't really focused, but by the third time I'm wiser. So I think that at least in our community in California, the fairy tales and folk tales are very popular with adult audiences, and they will go to a theater to hear these kinds of stories, and they resonate. It depends on the style of presentation. If it's presented in a context that for children in almost a patronizing style, which could happen, obviously an adult is not going to want to sit in the audience or pay $25 for a ticket to hear a story. But if they leave with different layers of meaning and understanding, I think the material can work. And while I'm playing devil's advocate here, of course, on the personal stories, there's a lot of negativity about personal stories in California because so many people take advantage of that venue to use it for personal therapy, so that they come and share something, their bankruptcy, their husband abandoning them, and they're crying. But it's not really polished. It's really not a story in story format with a beginning and a middle and an end. There's no humor. There's no suspense. It's really just an outpouring of the heart, which is something that's needed in our society with their alienation of people going through life all alone and hungering for a sense of community. And that's one of the things I think storytelling provides, that we're both as an audience member listening to this story, or as the teller being in a storytelling community. It's wonderful to find this group of people with similar interests. I went to an event here in Chennai where the community was invited to come and tell a personal story. And so 14 strangers who didn't know each other came into a room, and 2 hours later, these 14 strangers were friends and had a connection with each other. And that's the magic of the whole event. Fortunately, nobody did a narcissistic kind of story that I'm talking about, with the tears and sharing their tragedy.
Yeah, some personal stories it's more appropriate to tell to one's therapist as opposed to tell to an audience. But the two different things are so connected because you know, many of us shape our own identity and our own vision of our life story based on our favorite folktales and our favorite epics. So you know, we often feel we're living a fairy tale or an epic, and then we're so shocked when it turns out life is not a fairy tale and something happens that is way off script. Then we have to practice life story repair to take stock of things and get back towards on a track towards living happily ever after. But now I think we've been joined by is that Ms. Marina?
Yes, that's Marina.
Yes.
I am Marina.
Visiting India from Sweden.
Yes.
Would you introduce yourself and maybe comment a little bit about what we've been talking about?
Yeah. I am Marina. I'm a storyteller. I have a background as an actress, but I have been this year. I've been an actress for 35 years and storytelling for 30 years. And I started to do storytelling when I got my first child, and I had to leave my big career. And somehow storytelling came into my life. And I started to do storytelling performances, which were in that time in Sweden. Storytelling in the 80s, storytelling in Sweden started to grow. But it was very, very, very much that to be a storyteller, you had to be sitting like this still and just speak your words. And that is like the kitchen table storytelling, but very good. I said very good in one way, but that was not my way really, because I like to dance. I wanted to do a performance like a Sherazade, dancing and telling stories about life, about wisdom, using fairy tales, and I did it already at that time for children. I started to do it as a performance for children, and I had magic stones and whatever. But also, as you say, Eric, or no, it was the other lady. I don't remember your name. Was it Ruth?
Yes.
Yeah. I very quick. I had a fable, I had a myth, and I had a fairy tale in that program, which I still do. And adults also loved the performance, and I very quick recognized that it's my intention of how I will tell the story. If I tell the story for children or if I tell it for adults, I can tell mostly the same stories, and I have done so my whole life. I just lately, last year, started to do my personal stories, and doing personal stories, which was a big step for me to do. It's one thing if you do it in a small, like a more therapeutic room, then you can tell your life stories in a more private way, or it's like a way of starting to build the story. But slowly, if you work on it, you can make your personal stories like a performance, which is not embarrassing, but it can be touching, or because you want to say something and you have worked it in a way so that it's really concerned. It will really concern people in many ways. So my life, I have used storytelling as a lot of performing. I have used it as healing, consciously for adults, but very, very often when I worked with children in schools, where there are many foreigners, very often I have noticed by telling stories, fairy tales, that comes from different parts of the world, where these children have a connection. Suddenly, something, it can be a very anxious child, suddenly there is something that makes those children feel that, oh, this is my story. And afterwards they will come and they will tell me something. Like there was two boys, two brothers. I was telling a Russian fairy tale and about Baba Yaga. I don't know if anyone knows her, Baba Yaga.
Yeah.
And there were two brothers they were always like, they could never sit still, but they were not the talky ones. They were shy also. And they looked like they were from South Africa, South America, from Chile or something. After that performance, they came and they were standing in front of me. And I was thinking, oh, they want to chat with me, but what is it that they want to tell me? And suddenly they started to say, you know, she's not that witch, she's not called Baba Yaga, her name is Baba Yaga. Oh, and I was listening, oh, Baba Yaga. And I was thinking, they don't look Russian, the children. How can they know this? And I was thinking quick. And suddenly I realized that their mother was Russian. She had been telling those stories. And so I was taught something. And those children, they were sitting so quietly, so still. They got that something, it was a transformation for them. And I have had many situations of this thing, which means like, because Eric, you were talking about therapy also, the way of therapy, even if it's for children or it's a mythology for adults, it's like you don't need to know people. If you have the right story in the right time and you feel that this is the story I have to tell now, because sometimes you just feel I have to change my story, I have to take another story. It's something that you just, by experience, you feel it. And then suddenly, without touching and knowing a lot about someone, you can touch that person and heal something, or start a healing process, or wake up something. And that is what is so fascinating. This is what I love.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, India has an interesting relationship with what we call fairy tales, in that, you know, in the West, a lot of fairy tales contain recycled stories about ancient goddesses, the pre-Christian goddesses.
Yeah.
Which had to go underground when Christianity was instituted. But in India, nothing like that happened. The most ancient goddesses and gods are still being worshipped.
Yeah.
So you can't call, if a story is devotional and ritual, you can't call it a fairy tale. That would trivialize it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I look for Indian stories that feel like fairy tales in India, but stories here tend to be more devotional. And also these different Western genres of animal fable, fairy tale, legend, epic, In India, they tend to be all combined in many cases. The epics often involve, for example, Rama is a famous story where he's congratulating a squirrel for contributing some stones to building a bridge. And he pets the squirrel, and 3 white lines come on the squirrel. And that's why the squirrel has 3 white lines on her back today. A story like that, it's an epic, it's a legend, it's considered history, and it's also an animal fable. And India is full of that. But I wanted to ask, can I call you Marina? Or I probably should call you Dr. Marina. But can I call you Marina?
Yes, yes, of course.
Yes. Do you work with groups? Do you encourage, do you train others to tell their life stories? And I ask because, you know, there is a field now called narrative therapy. And it's one form of using stories and storytelling in therapy. It encourages people to focus on their survival skills, their coping skills, and reframe their life story in terms of their inner strength and how they got those. Related to narrative therapy is a field called narrative medicine, which is being pioneered at Columbia University. They have a master's degree program in narrative medicine, which is all about encouraging doctors and nurses to listen to patients and encourage patients to formulate the story of their own lives, their illness, their recovery. And I guess the basic idea here is that by formulating and telling a story, one may come to feel more in control of one's life. So I'm wondering, Marina, if you do that sort of work, or I know Chetna does it, but if anyone would say about that kind of work.
I could say that I work with this also. I could also say that I studied to be a homeopath for 3 years. So in that, when you take the constitution, the anamnes from the people, it's like listening to stories. But I work in very different fields. I can use a story, use stories practical to find pictures, to find things from that story that connect to that people, to the listeners. And then from that picture, somehow you will find something about your own, that why is this picture connecting to you and your life. And slowly you can start working on that. I think there are so many things to say, but I would like to tell that I am in Sweden. I am in the border of many associations in Sweden. I'm also in Federation for Storytelling in Europe, sitting in the border. And in Sweden and in Scandinavia, we have one organization called ALBA. Do you know about that, Eric?
No.
ALBA is... they are a field that they focus much more on healing stories and different ways of how you use storytelling for healing work. And we had a project for years where we started. It was like a program, as storytelling for peace. And we had Israel and Palestine as our subject, and we were supposed to go there, and we were working for a few years on this project. And when you start to work with this, whatever peace work or healing work you work with, everybody wants to heal the world out there. Slowly you come closer and closer and closer, and you see that you have to deal with things in yourself instead. In this project, many of those life stories slowly come into life. But you always have to in some situation, you were talking about doctors or in therapy, then of course people are supposed to tell more vulnerable things. And then in other courses, maybe people will say that we have to okay, we will use personal stories, but this is not for therapy. So it's important to make that clear, if it is for therapy, or even if it will be therapeutically. Whatever you do, that is my experience. I was working with some language teacher, and they were very much like this. They were like, what is this? Is this therapy we are going to do? And I say, no, we are not going to do therapy. The skills I will teach you, the things I will do with you, it's techniques that are used. Actors use this technique, drama, and of course it can be therapeutical. It can be, but I am not here to do therapy with you. I will give you something, I will give you tools, and then it's up to you if you want to go in and we work to give from yourself. And they actually accepted. Then they accept, because they were very much, and they didn't know each other. And just like someone else, I think it was you saying that, suddenly those teachers, they started to say, oh, I got a friend by the other teacher. I know someone else who's talking Spanish, one teacher who's talking Arabic, the other, we know each other, we have something to share. So anyway, that was quite a lot of me. I think I've been talking quite a lot now, so this is a little presentation of my
therapy and stories. James Hillman, the former director of the Jungian Institute, maintains that if children grow up knowing the traditional fairy tales, they'll never need a therapist. Yeah. Because the stories themselves are preventative medicine. They teach you try again, don't give up, don't accept substitutes. The dragons in your life, those are all the metaphors. And kids know that Baba Yaga is a very scary figure. But so is your mother when she says, get in there and clean up your room right now. And they know that. Kids get it, and the violence in fairy tales. So I agree with James Hillman that there's something very self-informing to the child growing up, that they can handle these dangers and threats, because the fairy tales have taught them the way. Maybe it's not on a conscious level, it's a subliminal level. And even myself as a child with an unhappy childhood, I always knew that I was going to be all right, because, first of all, I was the third child, but that at the end of the story, I didn't ever believe that it just ended with marriage. Some people say, oh, because of what Walt Disney has done, that stories end with, that you have to have a partner and end in that. And I always understood in some level that it was just becoming whole, that the different parts of yourself would come together and you would be whole, and life would be all right once you finished up whatever tests or trials or experiences that you went through in the fairy tale. And in my case, it came true. I married a prince and I lived happily ever after. But I think part of that was because I grew up with knowing the Russian fairy tales, the German fairy tales, the Swedish fairy tales. There were all these books that were available to me. And I don't put the cutoff age that at your childhood. I would say even as an adult, if you're going through some kind of experience, hearing the fairy tales is very therapeutic. It doesn't have to be. And sometimes I'm not even sure, I'm just being controversial, that hearing other people's personal stories is necessarily therapeutic for you. It can tear you apart, too. I mean, when people tell stories about being raped or seeing their father murdered, I have bad dreams about that for a long time. It's very hard for me to let go of it.
Well, but I think just people talking and sharing feeling compassion for each other, I think these are healing things in themselves. Of course, it can go, it can go overboard if people are too needy. But in general, I think just the very process of making art. One of the controversies that came up at this Expressive Arts Conference was, does there have to be a discussion after art for art to be therapeutic? And there was one camp that said no, just the process itself is therapeutic, and you can leave it at that. So I think you know, just giving voice to feelings, the good mother, the bad mother, the good father, the bad father. That in itself, together with the bonding that tends to happen during a successful social event, that that is therapeutic. So now that I've raised the subject of social events and communication, I was really taught at Penn Folklore that the communication event is not just sending a message, but it's sending a message and getting feedback and giving feedback, and you know, the feedback loop that goes on with it. So I enjoy very much that kind of giving and taking that goes on during a storytelling event. What else can be said about communication and storytelling? What do we mean storytelling can be a form of communication? I mean, is that obvious, or is there anything else that can be said about it?
Well, storytelling is communication, and I think we forget elements of communication. For example, silence. So much of life that our communication with each other is not through words, through a facial expression. We can tell if someone approves or disapproves, or the silence, how long the silence is maintained, the body language, and all of these things are part of communication. It's not just, we can't just depend on words and language that tell the story. It's something that really fascinates me, how much of a story can be told through, for example, I remember many years ago I took a workshop from a man named Tony Montanaro. He teaches mime, or taught mime, he's no longer alive, in Maine. And storytellers all over America would go and study with him for 2 weeks. And he stressed the body language and things beyond words that convey a story. And as you watched people leave and saw them telling stories, you realize how much of the actual text of the tale that we don't even need the words, that we communicate so much on other levels. And that's one of the things when people take a text from a book, which many storytellers memorize a text and recite it as almost like a theater piece without making it their own story or telling it. They're missing a communicative skill between people. And the irony is that as soon as someone points that out to them, because it's particularly an unconscious thing, the ability of that person to hold an audience goes up a mile because they were limiting themselves by this quality of just relying on the text.
But many people feel that if I stop talking, people will stop listening and go away.
Just the opposite. I think if you're losing an audience, the best thing you can do is stop and take a long pause and look around, and that will draw the audience back to you. And it has a second advantage. If you stop, if you're going clippity-clop through the story, it changes your voice, it changes everything. And that's actually, I forgot what I was going to say about Tony Montanaro. His criticism of me in that workshop, which is so insightful because I'd never really thought about it before, was he asked him if my animals seemed real. He said, well, you're not a mime, you're a minimalist. Yes, I saw a lion, I saw a tiger, but he said, your story went clippity-clop through the story. And I didn't see the reactions of when lion said, I'd like you to do this. I want to see tiger's answer and lion's reaction before the story goes on. I want, just like in a puppet show, you wouldn't just have each puppet speak. You want to see how they react. And so to take a few seconds and show with a face or a body what the response was, and it was like a light bulb went off. And it wasn't just for that story, but for every single story ever since. I realized that adds a whole texture, a whole dimension to the story. Unlike the written text, where of course the story goes on. Just like in the written text, it might say she went in the garden and picked beautiful flowers. As a storyteller, you can be very repetitive and describe the fragrances and the colors and make it real, which would not work as a literary story at all. So it's like a translation process to me. It's like two different languages. literacy and the spoken language, the oral tradition, as Asha saying that. Asha or Asha? Asha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we're freeing. I think we're saviors. We're freeing these old stories that have been frozen in print, and now taking them back in this oral tradition.
So we're freeing the stories, but I feel we're also freeing the people, or
Okay.
helping the people.
Yes, I agree.
helping first of all helping ourselves, and then possibly other people also.
I concur.
So, okay, so storytelling happens in everyday conversation, as in I did this morning and I hope to do this tomorrow. It can happen in performance on a stage. It can happen in a religious context of telling the story of the development and the structure of the universe. There are many different types of communication events, social events, in which storytelling occurs. Asha or Alvin or
Yes.
Chitra, do you want to add anything to any of this?
Okay, I see one pattern which is developing right now in Chennai is parents are beginning to feel the need for stories. So I think good stories are getting a revival. So I think it's a good way to go forward, and it's nice to see parents are beginning to realize and they're coming for repeated performances, which is nice in a way. And even for our festival, we are seeing repeated audiences, which is, I think it's for the first time. We are like seeing repeated audiences, so it's a healthy growth. Ruth, just a question to you. Now, you said one fairy tale can be told to children in one way. Now, how do you take the same fairy tale and make it more adultish?
It's a hard question for me to answer because it's almost an intuitive thing that you care about your audience so much. And also it's the style of the teller. I mean, one teller may be able to, well, there's a storyteller, a nationally known storyteller in America, maybe some of you have seen her, but she does travel internationally, named Margaret Mead MacDonald. And Margaret began telling children's stories in a library, and she's maintained that quality. And she addresses adult audiences as if they were children, and no one minds because it's her personality, and she's able to do that. If I did that, I think I would be a major turnoff. It would, because my style of working with children, although I really respect the intelligence of children a lot, I think they understand stories at levels way above their reading level and experiential. But with an adult, you can subliminally, as something happens in the story, you recognize that it's happening. Well, like, for example, in this, there's a story, The Handless Maiden. It's a Grimm fairy tale. And the king has to go to war and sends a note back. It's complicated, and the devil changes the note. But my point is that the queen mother, when she sees this note, she looks at it and says, "What does war do to men?" Okay, well, that line would be very different if you were telling that story to a younger audience. But with an adult audience, that line can become a pause before, a pause after, and we all bond together in that moment as we all think about it for a minute. Does war really change a man if you're, and so on. So it's an attitudinal kind of thing for me.
Okay. No, the one sorry.
It's such a personal thing. You choose your own story as a storyteller, and then you choose how to tell it. It's kind of a lonely endeavor. You work all by yourself, and then you have your sharing your social experience telling it. Then you go back all by yourself, learning the story and working on it. Which is why I wonder why more storytellers don't want to go to workshops and classes and exchange ideas with other storytellers. And many prefer just to work by themselves and don't want to share their expertise or hear what anyone has to say. That's a dilemma to me. I can't figure that out, actually. But anyhow, I think I went off track and I interrupted you. But
Okay, just an experience. So most of the time when we do an adult performance, the one feedback that we always get is it was too cartoonish, it was so dramatic. Maybe it's more suitable for kids. So how do you go about facing such questions?
I'm not sure that I understand you. Which is so dramatic. What?
No, sometimes when you do exaggerated facial expressions, people generally say it's too cartoonish, and they tend to cut off.
Um, I think it depends on the sincerity of the teller. If that's an act that the person's putting on and it's not really boiling up within them, um, then the audience is going to read it that way. Some people are just naturally have that as part of their personality. If they're telling you about going to the grocery store, they're going to tell you with that kind of stuff, and that's who they are. If you try to put a cloak on and change yourself, that, oh, I'm telling to children now, so now I'm going to be really whatever. If you're a really sincere, deep person and you love children, you don't just be who you are and talk straight, and kids will like it and respect it. And I think that's when I started teaching storytelling. A professor said to me, Ruth, I don't think you can teach storytelling. It's not something that you can teach. And I said, I don't understand what you're saying. And he said, well, you have to be a whole person to be a storyteller. And it's taken me many years to really appreciate what he said, and I think he's absolutely right. I think you kind of have to have your own self together when you're out telling a story, so that you're a real person. You're not putting on a show.
You have to be real. And to be real, you have to, get in touch with yourself in some way. Regarding this matter of people sending their children to storytelling events and for storytelling classes, there's more and more demand for storytelling classes. Of course, in India, the part of it is that many parents want their children to be very fluent in English.
Yeah.
But also, we're in the midst of a global situation of attention deficit disorder. Children all around the world are running around and having a hard time settling down and paying attention to anything. So I believe that through storytelling, especially storytelling, that children can be helped to settle down and get in touch with their emotions and all, and stop this running.
Yeah. It's more possible for the teacher or for the storyteller. If the teachers use it, they will see the children like you were, and you will see or you will feel some small things that happen, and you will moderate with that. I once was supposed to go to a school where they also had a lot of refugees children, and they wanted me to read a very famous writer, stories from her. And I really didn't like it, but I did the project because, and these were not stories, these were written stories, like I didn't knew them on my repertoire. I know her, I know the stories in one way, but they were not stories in the way that you usually storytellers use. But it's okay, I did this thing, and I will never do it again, or if I will do it, I will do it very... I mean, it was horrible to not be able, when suddenly they came in with a girl that was very, very nervous, and I couldn't leave the book. I was stuck somehow in the book. I was not free to improvise or to feel or to get in connection with her or the group, because I feel you always have to somehow, when you have children or adults, to connect with the smallest one, or there's always someone you just need to have to get on with a trip, and if on the road, on your journey, and if you catch that person, then you can go away with the whole audience. What was the no, I lost myself a little bit there, but
And that opens another topic. I was speaking with a storyteller today about eye contact, and she was saying that frequently storytellers, when there's a mixed audience, like a lot of children, a lot of adults, all the eye contact is focused on the children, and they don't really make eye contact with adults. She was saying that she feels left out when someone is telling a story and they're just focused on the children. She wants to be acknowledged that she's part of the audience too.
Yeah.
And of course, and with your theater background, Marina, you can appreciate the difference between the fourth wall and what storytelling does, where you actually do acknowledge people. And sometimes I think if you're in a theater when it's all dark and you really can't see their faces, not a good way to tell stories. But even if you pretend like you're seeing a face and you focus and you may be looking at an ear or the side of a chair, at least you're making the attempt to try and make a real connection with your audience.
But this is also something you learn by experience. You have to do, and you will learn it. You will feel it.
Okay, I think we're approaching the end of the hour, and why don't we just go around and say some final thoughts. I'll begin. Alvin, you know, I guess, and Asha and Ruth know that my style is to talk to children as if they're adults. And I kind of have an understated style where I just kind of pretend I'm telling my friends about what happened. And you know, when we hear a story, on one level it's about animals or people or gods, but on another level it's just about me, and it's just about the person I'm speaking to. We perceive stories in terms of it's happening to us. If it was happening to me, what would I do? What would I feel? So, you know, part of the art of storytelling is choosing what story to tell, in what situation, to what audience that will, so it'll be most easy for your listener to relate to it and to take it to heart and identify with it. But to me, it's all, whether a personal experience story or any other type of story, it's all just about, it's all situations and emotional relationships that characters are having that we can all relate to. So I think there's a lot of horrible, terrible, very depressing things that are happening in the world today, including income inequality and related problems. But I think I can be very optimistic about the future of storytelling. Because, for one thing, video conferencing, which we're doing now, I think it's only going to grow, and I think there's going to be more and more interest and demand for storytelling by video conference, discussion about, training in, performance of, because you know, people will just talk to each other, but beyond that, they'll want to do something else. So teaching languages, of course, giving therapy, selling and buying, all of these things will happen by video conference, but I think storytelling is going to have a special relationship with video conferencing. So, you know, for a while there, people who got wrapped up in technology became antisocial. And it's still that way to some extent, that people who are just playing games lose the art of conversation and give and take. But as video conferencing becomes more and more a part of the technology scene, even in games, I think it's going to be good for storytelling, and storytelling will be good for it. So I'm very glad that Chennai and Bangalore and India is more and more part of the global professional storytelling circuit. And you know, I go to the countryside sometimes, Konjam Tamil Thariyam. I speak a little bit of Tamil, and I'm constantly working on it. We will bring from the Tamil countryside even more traditional stories and traditional ways of telling stories to enrich the global conversation and ways to communicate. So I'm happy and optimistic about the future of storytelling. Anyone else? Final words. Ruth, take your turn.
No, I just want to acknowledge what a pleasure it is to be here. storytellers that I've met and see how talented they are and how caring and how sincere, and that they've chosen storytelling as a vocation or avocation, both. I've met both that with such sincerity and passion. So that's, I can't ask for more than that from the storytelling community. I'm grateful to have this opportunity to be here.
And aside from many other things, Ruth is a leading member of the California storytelling scene, or the Bay Area storytelling scene. So we honor you, and we appreciate you and the entire San Francisco scene. We hope for more communication in the future. Alvin, Asha?
First of all, Eric, we need to thank you for bringing Chennai Storytelling Festival here and making it happen. Thanks to Sandhya too for bringing in the idea, because without CSF, storytelling would probably just be at that level. It may not have come up, but each year, CSF from the year it began in 2013, we can see the upswing, as I would like to call it, in the storytelling scene in Chennai. And we also have tellers coming in from other states who want to participate in CSF. So definitely the revival is happening, and it's going to get bigger and better. And I think cheers to storytellers that have gone before us, that are here, and for the future generation of storytellers. Oral tradition is here to stay. So I think we owe thanks to everybody, to stories especially in particular, because without them, none of us would be here, and we wouldn't call ourselves storytellers, would we? So, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. I would just add that I've been giving storytelling workshops in Chennai for about 10 years, but 4 years ago it was Sandhya who went to Singapore and was especially inspired by the Storytelling Festival in Singapore.
Correct.
I'm not sure exactly what they call it, the Asian Storytelling Festival.
Yes.
But Singapore is 10 years ahead of us, and very ahead of us in terms of organization and fundraising. So the direct inspiration for the Chennai Storytelling Festival is the Singapore Storytelling Association and Festival, and we had one of their directors, Kamini Ramachandran, as our guest co-host in the first year. Thanks to her, and thanks to Sandhya.
That's right.
Alvin?
Chennai hasn't said anything.
Final? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Alvin, did you want to say any final thoughts?
Nothing big, Eric. Just at this point want to bring to notice that CSF 2013 started my career as a storyteller.
Wonderful. And Chitra, you were away for a while, but
Yeah, I was very much here. You know, my son kept coming inside the room, so I didn't want to bother you all. So I went off the camera. Well, I see this as a great start, and I'm really happy and feeling privileged to be part of this. As a wannabe storyteller, I'm really looking forward for the workshop for the upcoming weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I'm going to enroll myself for both the days, and I'm really looking for an exciting learning journey as a storyteller. Thank you, everyone.
wonderful.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
Yeah.
with that, shall we sign off?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you also. I'm so happy I could join finally and get in contact with you. As I say, the last 3 or 4 years I come continuously here, and I have been speaking to people about storytelling in different ways in the world where I go and meet Indian people. And I also in Sweden I started to do storytelling work together with a Bharatanatyam dancer.
Wow, nice.
And so we interact with dance and have made some interesting things. So I'm so happy that I found you, and If I'm lucky, I can come in the weekend, but I'm not sure I can do that. Otherwise, I will
Can
meet
I ask
you soon
what
again.
city are you in? Can I ask? Where are you now?
I'm in Mumbai. I live
Mumbai.
in, yeah, I live here. Yeah.
Wonderful. Oh, you live here. Wonderful.
Yeah,
Did,
yeah.
did we? Are you on Storytel, the global, email group? Is that how you know my name, or how did you hear of me?
No, I heard about you. I live here some months every year because my daughter lives here. So I come to stay here once in a while. I came to hear of you about from Sonia Tapia Cameron from Spain. You had from FEST, Federation of European Storytelling Network, and we are in the same board. And so we having Skyping meetings from here, and I was talking to her, and she was telling me that you had contacted her. So she gave me your name, and that's when I started to Google on you.
Great.
And that's how I found. That's how I found you.
Good. And I hope now that you've met Chetna, who's in Mumbai, and also there's a woman named Usha Venkatraman, who's a very fine storyteller based in Mumbai. So I'm hoping, and I imagine you've worked with Geeta Ramanujam in Bangalore, because she's been to Sweden a number of times.
Yeah, I know there are some storytellers that has come long ago. I met a woman, and I think she has come to Gothenburg. There are some come to Gothenburg with Ulf Ernström. Do you know Ulf Ernström?
No, I don't.
No, anyway, and also last week there was an Indian storyteller, but she lives in England, I think. She was having a workshop about working with refugees and so, but I don't remember her name now. But I don't know. I have met one storyteller here who works with healing story, Anupa Mehta. Do you know her?
No.
No, but she works with healing story. She gives workshops here. I met her last autumn. But if we stay in contact, please give me names and I will Google, and hopefully if I not manage to come this weekend, I will stay until March, maybe 18th of March, I don't know. 20th of March is the World Storytelling Day. Do you usually celebrate it?
Yes, we do.
Yes. And I think the year before last we did a video conference like this. It was about dragons and other monsters.
Yeah, that was the theme last year. This year is strong women. Strong women is the topic for the year.
We're ready.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so now we'll sign off for the evening.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Everybody, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.